Okay, we're going to be talking about the second part of the alpha and the advanced keying breakdown, which is going to be types of keys. Uh, so we have a holdout mat with a roto, a garbage mat with a roto, a core key or hard key, an edge key, and a key called gray matting or soft keying is another word for that. So let's get started. The first section is garbage mat roto. We basically want to get rid of any parts of the green screen that we don't want to see with our key. So we wouldn't want to see anything that's on set or the end of this green screen or the shadows on the green screen or this camera hood at the top of the screen or anything like that. We would just want to see this guy in green screen. What you would want to do is designate the area that you want to see. So you just draw a roto shape around the area you want to keep for the key. And you'll want to use a merge set to mask up here. So this is our key, and this is what we'd want to end up with. So this is our result. Let's just get rid of all the extra stuff. Now the reason I put the roto off to the side is I find it a little more manageable. You can do things to the roto like erode it and blur it that you couldn't otherwise do, or would be more difficult to do while it was plugged into the stream. Most people plug it in like so, but it's much harder to control it without controlling the plate when you plug it in like that. So if I were to blur it, I'd have to blur only alpha, and then it gets a little confusing, and I find this a little more visual. But there is another reason why I did that. And when you make a roto shape without plugging it into anything except, say, crop. So you make a roto shape, and this is just setting the format, this crop right there. So it gives you a bounding box. And the bounding box is also called the work area, and it's what the computer is going to calculate in the frame when we do calculations, like when I blur it or something. So you get this bounding box for free when you make the roto shape. If I make another roto shape off to the side, you'll see it will just encompass wherever the roto is. So if I make another one, it will encompass both of them. So wherever the shapes are, the full extent of the shapes. And we want to be able to use that. So similar to if I were to crop this footage, if I were to crop it like so to just the area that I want, I get a nice bounding box. And what this is saying is it's going to ignore everything outside of this frame. It's great. So the roto does that, except it with a crop, it's only a straight line. With a roto, you can make any kind of unique shape that you want, but you still get that nice bounding box. So the key to doing this is to set the B box to either A or intersection when you have it set to merge mask. And if I set it to A, you'll see that the bounding box of the roto goes outside of the frame, and this is because I have it set to clip to no clip. If you clip to format, it'll get rid of it, but I like no clip. It's a little nicer when you're working. So if this is the case, the bounding box is going to grow on these sides, and you want to set it to just intersection. And what that means is the intersection between where it was in the B input, which is this guy, which is the format, and the intersection of that in the roto. So it's conveniently inside our work area. So I want to quickly just demonstrate the importance of the B box, or the bounding box. Here I have two checkerboards. One, I have a merge mask set to union, which is going to just make it the full frame. And in the second, I have the merge mask set to B box of A, which is going to crop it in to the same B box of the roto shape. So what that means is that this first example is going to calculate all these extra pixels outside of the bounding box, and the second one is going to ignore everything outside the bounding box. So if I do a heavy calculation like a couple grades, median, and defocus, let's see how long that takes to calculate without the B box. See how slow the scan line is going? It needs to calculate all those extra pixels, and it really should only be calculating this small area. So if I move on to this one with the B-box, you'll see it's way faster. It was about a tenth of the speed. So what it's doing is just, it doesn't care about any of this stuff, and it only calculates within this smaller frame. So if you have a lot of elements in your script going on, and you've got a lot of defocuses or grades or what have you, it can really speed up your overall comp. So that's why I think it's pretty good to roto the area you want to keep, and then merge mask and set to either A or intersect, depending on which one works. You basically don't want to grow it past the format. Since we're shrinking this frame, we would never want it to go outside of it, so we'd set it to intersection. Holdout map roto. Okay, so the goal of your holdout map roto is to keep all the areas of the green screen that you know are opaque or not see-through. So in this situation, we have this table which is reflecting the green screen, and some of these glasses which are reflecting the green screen, and it's causing the table to look green, and that will make it see-through when we look at our alpha channel. And to help you see that, you can just gamma down the viewer gamma, and so you see these areas are see-through, and if we look at the end, we're going to see that they are see-through, and we're seeing their background through it. So what you can do is, especially if you have a still camera or an inanimate object like a couch or a table or something, you can just roto that very roughly and throw that in there and over it in the alpha, and that's going to help those areas not be see-through. And if you started crunching your key to get rid of those, your edges would get ruined, really. So an easier thing to do is just to over a roto in it. You could have also rotoed this guy very roughly, but you'll see if we just toggle this on and off, those problem areas go away, and so that might be the best result versus trying to mess with your key, because you still get the nice edges if you don't mess with the key and you just over a roto. So another example would be this girl here. So if we look at the key, if we gamma down, there's going to be some holes, which you could always crunch the key to get rid of that, but this is a scenario where we have some hair, and so maybe we want to keep the hair soft or the arm soft or whatever. And if we do stuff like dilating, all those little tiny 1 pixel holes become huge. So you would want to roughly roto this girl, just super roughly here, moving through, nothing too fancy, and just over that. And so if you over this, you can't really see much, but here we go, then it'll get rid of all these problems when the erodes happen. There you go. Just another quick example. So if I had this guy, play this through, if I had this girl on this green screen, I noticed that the car itself is not really moving that much, so it would be a great opportunity if we look at this alpha and gamma down. You know, the seat is see-through, and some of the steering wheel and stuff is showing through, and versus crunching my key, I could just throw a roto shape in there and over that, and you know, I could get a little more accurate with this chair or what have you. But maybe from that point I could start crunching up my key to get rid of those areas, like so. So there you go. So we have a core key, and the core key, the goal is to keep the center of the core, the subject, white and everything else black, and to patch any holes or any chatteringness inside the white center of the character, or whatever you're trying to keep. So this is kind of like the holdout mat roto, except you know, you don't want to do a roto every time, so a lot of times you can just do a really rough key and get that core of whatever you're trying to key to be solid white instead of doing a roto. And so it's very quick and crunchy keys. I usually use Primat because it's just so easy to pick what you want to keep, and it's just really quick to use. I always put a grade after the key to like mess with the black point and white point to crunch it a little bit more, and you would want to, let's see, so we have a crunchy prime mat here, and you're trying to make it just straight white and black. So if I gamma down, you'll see it's pretty solid. There's some areas where there's a few holes, but with the grade, all those holes get away, and you'll see it's super crunchy. There's not a lot of gray pixels, there's just like white and black. But the goal here is to not get the core key that you're doing to go past, where the edge key would go. And by that I mean, you don't want it, see this area here, there's some green pixels still, so it would be like a transparent area in the hair, and all this hair, so you'd want to see through that. But if you have your core key that goes all the way out here to the hair and covers it all up, that means that that's going to be opaque, which is wrong. So in this scenario, for a character, especially a girl with hair, you would want to rote it in and kind of feather it in, so it kind of it's white in the center, and then as it approaches the edge, it kind of feathers off, and it never actually touches or affects the actual edge of the character. So if I go back and forth between this, you'll see that the core key is now a few pixels shy of where the edge is, and so we're still getting problems in the hair, for instance. And so what I would do is I would just quickly just make a mat around the hair and just stencil that from the core key. Just remove that, and so all you're left with is this really rough inner core of whatever you're trying to key. And here's just an example. So all the red was where the key is, and you'll see it's keeping all the necessity areas, if you will, all the areas that you really need to be completely white. So here's just another quick example. You do a really crunchy key, and I could just try to show you right now. So if I did prime mat, you would just select the color, go to alpha, and just start sampling huge chunks, and switch to foreground color. And what I would do is I would gamma all the way down and just make sure all this stuff is as white as I can get it, like so. Maybe this part here, yeah. And then I would do the opposite and gamma all the way up and go to background noise and start cleaning all this noise up to, oops. And then after I had that prime mat, I would then make an additional grade here where I basically just crunch all the colors, so I have a real nice solid mat. And then what I've done is I've dilated it in a few pixels. I made a tool here called feather, which I'll get into in a little bit. And so I feathered it in, which is really similar to like a roto's feather. It's doing a very similar thing to this. It's even got like a smooth fall off thing, so I can control the fall off, smooth 0, smooth 1, just like the roto would. Anyhow, and what I've done here is, so I rotoed it in, feathered it a little bit, but the feathering, since it was like blurring the image, it kind of goes past where the original dilate was, so I've just masked it by the original thing here, so it doesn't, let's see, so it doesn't go past where I want it to go. So, and that's it. And that's what you want to do for a core key. And make sure you use your gamma on the viewer. So the edge key. This is probably the most important key. And the goal of the edge key is to preserve as much detail and transparency as possible, and to give an accurate representation of how opaque the subject that you're trying to key is in the edge. And so we're focusing mostly on the edge. So since we've done our core key or holdout roto, we can actually ignore a lot of what's inside the subject, because we're going to take care of that in another part. So what you're really trying to do is focus on just the edge pixels where it blends into the green screen or blue screen that you're using. And a general rule of thumb would be the more you tweak your key, for example, the more you push around your key to fill all these holes in the middle here, the worse your edges are actually getting. That's a general rule. So if I push it too far, I've crunched my key, and sure, the middle has gotten better if I make all this stuff go away, but I've actually kind of ruined my edge. So you wanna keep that in mind. Of course, it's okay to tweak the settings a little bit, but be careful not to go too far, because then your edge will kind of be ruined. And so when you wipe back and forth between the plate and your key, it should all kind of make sense. And so here we see all the little strands of hair, and it makes sense there's hair there, and we see it in the key as well. I just use an IBK gizmo to use this one. You can also use a key light or whatever key that you're trying to use, and I'm just going to show an example of you can get a similar result with either one. In this case, this IBK is probably giving me a better result because it looks like I can see more hair strands. But in either case, we're not really caring about what's in the middle. We're caring only about, say, the hair or the edges where there's motion blur, or just the edges where it's blending. And another example is this girl here. And so I just did a quick key light, and you can tighten the grade a little bit, but very smallly, so I just darken it a tiny bit. And this would be a pretty good example of an edge key. And there's some cleanup you probably want to do, like roto out this area and get rid of some of this gray. But yeah, you're trying to maintain as much detail as possible, and you really don't want to crunch the grade. So the crunching of the grade is going to be done in the core key or the core mat or your holdout mat, and so that's where that's going to happen. And this one, you kind of just want to leave it alone. You're trying to preserve all the detail that you can. So the last type of keying that I'm going to talk about is a thing called gray matting, or soft keying, I've heard it be called. And so the goal of a gray mat is to not lose any information by letting the alpha fall to black. So you're keeping it at all grays, basically. And by doing that, you're preserving the subtlest of details, including things like reflections, hair, dirt on glass, and anything that's very transparent and that you still want to keep the detail in. And so a gray mat example for this of the windshield would look something like that. And basically it's not like a 50% gray or anything. You're basically, so you bring it to where it's black, and then you slowly raise it until you're above the point where the black is. So this would be a pretty good example. So we're just above where the black started, and we just raise it a little bit more, and now everything is gray, and we're essentially keeping all of this detail. And you're thinking to yourself probably, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. I don't want to see into the green screen. And yeah, you don't, but the way you'd want to use this is you'd want to despill in such a way that you make the green screen look like your background. So when you do see some of these pixels, they already look like the background, and I'm going to go into that in the despilling section. But know that this is a type of key, and it's actually really useful for areas like this, especially say this visor over here. It's almost impossible to keep this key. You'd have to do some sort of like soft roto and something like that. But in this scenario, these pixels will just blend with the background, and it'll maintain this kind of like dark bluish tint in the top, and it will look way more natural than any than keying to black could pretty much ever give you. So another example would be this here. And so what I've done is I pulled a key and then I desaturated the image before, like I added a saturation. I'll show you the saturation. So I pulled a normal key and then I took saturation and I just kind of nudged it down a little bit. And so I've eliminated all the black. And so by doing that, really, I know that I have kept all the hair because nothing is crunched, nothing is falling to black. So I know that all the hair, and you can see even in this area here where it's pretty hard to see where the hair is, it's going to gather all that information. It's going to be kept there. And so then your next step, as I said, would be to just do a proper despill, and where you're either trying to make the green screen look like a color of the background, or use the information from the background itself to raise the darks and lights from the background and raise those pixels to look more like it. So this is a technique, and I'm going to show you how to use this properly, and you'll all see it come together. But this is something I want to say it's you should try to do this in some situations. It's very situational. For example, if I were going to key this girl and I was going to throw like a hold that mat around her and she was going to be moving around or something, you'd probably see my mat around her. So it wouldn't be a good example. However, if this camera was not, didn't have a post move on it, and I just want to throw a background in, and she wasn't moving through frame or something with a post transform, then this would be a pretty good image to do the background on. And for this car one, you only see it, like the windshield could be its own key, and maybe this area, this driver's side window could be a different key, and this side could be black, and this side could be all gray matting, and you wouldn't know the difference because it's two separate sides. You could treat them differently. So maybe I would want to gray mat this area so I get all the details, and since maybe this is an open window, I would want to pull a different type of key on it. But you can get away with it in this shot because you're looking through glass, and so things could look a little different because you're looking through glass, for instance. So it's very situational. You wouldn't want to do the gray matting technique in every situation, but when you find the situations that it comes in handy, it can be very, very useful.